Coming up this time, the story behind the classic Cloughie computer game.
It was absolutely pioneering. It was the first, I think it's officially confirmed to be the first ever hybrid computer and board game.
Plus, how the Miracle Manager got involved.
They knew that a celebrity endorsement was the big thing. You had Daley Thompson's Decathlon, people were starting to do this. Kenny Dalglish had a football game at it. And so they went looking for who could we possibly put on this? And Giles, as a Leeds fan, went, I'm going to try for Cloughie.
You'll also hear what happened when Cloughie took part in the game's launch at Wembley Stadium.
Hugely supportive. It wasn't just cash the check and thanks very much, guys. It was, I really want to help you make this work.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marty Neil. You're listening to the Green Jumper podcast with Marcus Alton from BrianClough.com.
For this episode, I've been speaking to the man who's rebooted the classic football game, Brian Clough's Football Fortunes. He's a super fan of that original format, which mixed a board game with computer technology. It was quite a step forward at the time. I'm pleased to say Marty Neil joined me from Belfast. And I began by asking him, because of his name, whether he'd ever been mistaken for Martin O'Neill.
I'm not that fortunate. I actually got a check a very long time ago from the BBC made out to a Martin O'Neill that I couldn't cash.
Really?
That's about as much confusion as we've had. But I actually do live in the street in Belfast where Martin O'Neill grew up as a child.
Oh.
So there's a chance of confusion there, I think, at some point.
Oh, brilliant. Is he still thought of fondly down there?
Oh, very. Oh, wow. What a guy, apart from what a player, what a manager, but, what a personality as well. I think he's kind of like George Best, Alex Higgins. He's that embodiment of Northern Irishness,
Yes,
so,
yes.
Great guy.
And some of the punditry he's done in later years, very sort of Clough-esque as well, with the comments that he makes.
It was an interesting thread, isn't there? Martin O'Neill, Roy Keane, Brian Clough.
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah.
None of
all
them.
All very similar guys. Yeah.
Yes, they don't hold back. Always say what they feel. Well, as I mentioned, you've been behind the rebooting of the classic Cloughie game, Football Fortunes. Before we come on to the reboot, though, the original game back in the 1980s, it was quite revolutionary at the time, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It was absolutely pioneering. It was the first, I think it's officially confirmed to be the first ever hybrid computer and board game created anywhere in the world. There was a notion that Football Manager, the original Kevin Tom's game, was initially going to be a board game. And then Kevin Toms had thought a little bit about what if I did a computer bit, but then he went wholesale on the computer bit. So yeah, it is officially, until someone tells us different, it's the first ever hybrid board and computer game, which was very, very, very forward thinking for the time.
Yeah, and this was long before the days of fantasy football leagues, I guess, as well.
Oh, yeah. Long before the days of anything but teletext, really.
Yes. Yeah.
It's quite amazing, I think, it was on ZX Spectrums, kind of BBC Micros, very, very limited machines, but genius to think they get the machine to do all the things that are difficult to do in a board game, real genius. So on behalf of David Hall, who the original creator, who came up with this, I think, when he was about 14, and the idea just kept growing, and then he became a computer programmer and created the original,
Yeah, I know you were a big fan of the original game, which is how it's all, the rebooting's come about. How did it actually work then? You had the tabletop. Was that with a dice, and then the computer sort of worked out league tables and things?
Yeah, it was interesting. So it's a kind of standard board game format, if you like, in terms of how you manage your team, etc. So you have player cards, you've got your board, you move around, things happen on the board. Not too far from a Monopoly type setup, really.
Yes.
Heavily driven by economics. Then what we now call companion app. Which we would have called computer game at the time, or video game at the time.
Yes.
It took care of all the heavy lifting. So it kind of did your league tables, your fixtures, all the things that it would be really, really difficult to do in terms of pieces of paper moving around, So yeah, really fantastic. And it allowed the game to be 6 players as well, which was revolutionary as well, because the fear for parents, I'm sure, was that their kids are spending 10 hours a day staring at a screen for the first time.
Yes.
And I think in this area, you're like, oh God, if we'd known that then. But this was truly a social experience, and that was absolutely unique.
And the masterstroke, I suppose, was getting Cloughie on board and having his name attached to it. And not only that, but he took part in the actual launch. How did that side of it all come about?
So the guys at CDS Software, so David Hall, the genius creator of Brian Clough's Football Fortunes, he had gone to work for CDS Software, and Giles Hunter had been at WH Smith, and he'd been a buyer of all sorts of books, computer games, etc. But Giles very, very quickly recognised that the computer game industry was going to grow very, very fast. So he started a company called CDS Software. David came to him with the idea for Brian Clough's Football Fortunes, which then became Brian Clough's Football Fortunes. They had done Steve Davis snooker, and they had the celebrity endorsement, and that had rocketed sales. So that they knew that a celebrity endorsement was the big thing. You had Daley Thompson's decathlon. People were starting to do this. Kenny Dalglish had a football game out at this time. And so they went looking for who could we possibly put on this? And Giles, as a Leeds fan, went, well, I'm going to try for Cloughie. And they got him. And so the story goes, Giles could tell you better, but the story goes, they launched the game 1987 at Wembley Stadium. Clough comes along, really engaged with the whole thing, really loved it, had a great time, they had lunch, etc.
Yes.
Did photographs out on the pitch, but then they played the game out on the Wembley turf. So they had a lot of computers set up and all the journalists were playing the game. But Brian Clough was actually going around and coaching them all.
Just telling them what to do.
He picked it up pretty quickly, and he was very competitive, and he wouldn't leave until it was done. So, yes, so fantastic.
And didn't he have quite a good comment about the computers?
Yeah, so he wanted it to walk his dog. He said, "I'll get one when it figures out how to walk my dog." I think was one of the famous quotes.
Yes. It was one of those classic quotes. I think I'm going to program mine to pick our team, run the club, take my dog for a walk, and attend board meetings.
They're attending board meetings is genius. Yeah, there wasn't thought that as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although it's interesting because when I launched the Cloughie tribute website, Nigel was asked by the media about it, his son, and he said, yes, we're fine with it, no problem, although my dad wouldn't know a computer if it bit him. So, but
well, maybe this is his one exposure.
Yeah,
this was the one time he used them.
He did. Well, there was a picture of him, I think it must have been as part of the launch, where he's actually sitting at the computer desk, pretending to use it probably, but
yes, but an old BBC Micro in front of him. I have to fess up that I later photoshopped a pitch from the game into there. You may have seen the modified one, but he was very kind, and he did a bunch of photo calls with Giles and the guys, and it's on Giles' wall at home. It's kind of pride of place.
I remember reading some quotes from Giles saying that Cloughie on the day of the launch was fantastic. He did everything that was asked of him, and because Giles, I think, was only in his early to mid 20s, he more or less treated him like a son on the day. It was
he did.
Very special.
He remembers it so warmly, and he's so supportive of the game as well. He probably didn't really grasp, what these guys were at too much, but hugely supportive. It wasn't just cash the check and thanks very much, guys. It was, I really want to help you make this work. Yeah. So he did quite a lot of media engagements as well, and he talked about the game quite a lot. Yeah, he was bought in, no question. He's a great guy by all accounts.
Well, I know Cloughie was keen to get young people involved in football in whatever way he could, and I suppose this was another way of attracting the younger generation to the game, such as yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well it was important for Giles and certainly for David. Yes, they were making computer games, but they're big football guys. So it was very, very important for them to make a great game that they would want to play, and they still play it to this day. They get together over Christmas, and they play the original. Now that they've got their own, kind of, owners' rules, that nobody else plays, but
yes,
it's kind of fantastic.
A special version.
They still love it to this day. Which was nervous for me, because I'm a huge super fan of the original game.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to rebooting it, nervous moments.
Yes, playing with the original and not spoiling it is always a bit of a dangerous game in anything in life, I guess. But with the original, I think the players used to have points, didn't they? A value. And Nigel, Brian's son, only had 2 points. It's a good job Cloughie didn't know.
I've asked them about that. So they said that there was wine ordered.
Yes.
And a few people hung around the office, and they had the player cards, and they went, okay, 1 to 5. We're just going to, give these ratings arbitrarily. But yes, so Nigel Clough was a 2, a controversial decision. Now, no one can remember whether that was done prior to the endorsement of Brian Clough of the game, so they don't know. And then they'd left out Glenn Hoddle and Chris Waddle, and there was a few glaring omissions, for 1986-87, there was a few glaring omissions. So I put those back in.
Well, there's more coming up from Marty and how Football Fortunes has been rebooted. But before that, I've been catching up with a friend of Cloughie for another chat. Now, to speak to my next guest, I went to the home of Colin Shields, who was a friend of Brian Clough and one of the few people besides the players that Cloughie allowed to travel on the team coach. A few years ago, I had the pleasure of working with Colin on his book Champagne Memories and How Brian Clough Changed My Life, which has helped to raise money for good causes. And when we met up again, I began by talking about Martin O'Neill's book, On Days Like These. And Colin told me about his memories of O'Neill, including his time as Wycombe manager.
I remember, and when I say the royal we, I mean I don't mean myself, but we took the full team down to Wycombe to to play a game, and they beat us. And Brian said on the coach after, I've tried to do him a bloody favour. I says, and he's gone and beat us. He says, I'm not very happy about that. I said, anyway, before we left, there was somebody come, I think it was Martin, came running across the car park with one of those black post office bags, and he says, you forgot these, and I took them off him. And inside it was the European Cup and several other trophies that they took down to show off. So it could have been quite an expensive trip.
It wouldn't have been so good forgetting that kind of silverware, would it, really? But you had some good memories of Martin when he was a player. He was one of the ones that stand out for you.
Yes, he was a very, very pleasant young man. And I used to sit at the front of the coach, and when the players got on, most of them had just walked by, either nervous or not bothered. But Martin always took time to say good morning or good afternoon, and always presented himself very well. A very likeable young man.
Did you think even in those days that he might be management material?
Well, I thought he was very special because he was quiet and he was very good on the pitch. And Brian used to have a fond nickname for him called the lawyer because of his educational prowess. But I think deep down inside, I think Brian really liked him and respected him.
Now, looking at how Forest are doing these days with Steve Cooper in charge, I know you keep an eye on how the Reds are faring in the Premier League. What's your assessment so far?
Well, they've had a difficult time getting all these players to sort out the relationships with each other. But in the last few games, and I've always thought since Steve came into the club that there'd always be hope. There's something about the man that reminds me of Brian, to be honest. He's got something about him. And as things stand at the moment, I think they're working their way out from the bottom, and the players are starting to become individuals and There's some very good skills there. But I am pleased to see the likes of Yates and Worrell and Colback still involved, because to me they are the heart and soul of Forest.
And do you think that Cooper stands a good chance of keeping them up and gelling the team together? He's obviously got those motivational skills, maybe similar to Clough in some ways.
Yes, to be honest with you, I've no fears of them being relegated. The signs are so good that I think maybe mid-table, consolidate themselves. And I know this is everybody's saying this sort of thing, but that's the way I feel about it. And I look forward to each game. I get very excited, which is good.
What do you think Brian would make of things at the moment, seeing Forest back in the top flight?
He'd have to acknowledge that this man probably do better than he did in the Premier League. But when Brian was in the Premier League, they had the most amazing run of bad luck. They were playing good football, but things just didn't go for them. You can't put it all down to bad luck, but I don't understand why they got relegated. I know it's all about points, but when it came to Endeavour, it was there. They were playing well. It just didn't work for them. Now this man, he's got a different outlook on the game. I would say he's clinical, and it looks good. I like his style of management, and I like the style of football that they play.
And he does seem to be able to get the best out of certainly the young players and encourage them, almost like putting an arm around the shoulder when it's needed.
Yes, you can see that. You can see that when the players come off, when he fetches them off, and there's a good relationship going. And I know from listening to the views of other people, he has got good management skills. But one thing that's going for him, and I admire him for, is his relationship with the supporters. He really respects them, and they respect him.
Colin, thanks ever so much for sharing your memories and your thoughts on the current side. And don't forget, that book, Champagne Memories and How Brian Clough Changed My Life, is available on the brianclough.com website. Back now to my guest Marty Neil, who's given a reboot to the classic football game Brian Clough's Football Fortunes. And I asked him, as a super fan of the game, what was it that stood out and made it so special?
The social aspect was huge. So in my grandparents' house, I had my Spectrum computer. I grew up with my grandparents. And my friend, a guy called Brian Kirker, his mum worked in the biggest games and toy store in Belfast called Leisure World. So she just brought everything home. And of course, if it was football, she would just buy a copy because, we would be crazy for it no matter what.
Yeah.
But it was $14.99. It was very, very expensive for the time. It was hugely expensive. So by chance, she brought this thing home. We played it, and that was it. We were all hooked. I think as well, the political situation in Belfast at the time was obviously very, not good.
Yes.
Everyone was very happy for a bunch of kids to be indoors and playing something. So Brian Clough's Football Fortunes also worked for us in that regard, and that 6 of us could play it. It kept us off the streets. But we got so heavily into it. I mean, I actually remember we created a false drawer in a cabinet so that we could hide the Spectrum because you couldn't save the game.
Right?
We kept it plugged in.
To keep it going. Yeah.
Plugged in for a month. I mean, honestly, you think back and think you could have burnt the house to the ground, but I mean, you were top of the league. You were top of the league. You couldn't lose that.
No.
So you had no way of saving the game. That was it.
Keep it switched on so you wouldn't lose where you were from the last time.
For a month at a time.
Amazing, isn't it? How things have moved on. Yeah.
Indeed.
And when we say things have moved on, of course, you've rebooted it. How have you gone about doing that, but keeping the essence of the original?
Well, I think it was very important for me. I'd started a Facebook page. I think it was a Facebook page, just kind of talking about the original game. and a lot of, almost immediately, you had a lot of interest, a lot of guys coming along and, oh, yeah, I remember it. Oh, we still play it. And you realize there was lots and lots of people still playing the game all around the place. So then there was a guy called James Hallett, who knew Nigel Clough, but also knew the original guys behind the game, Giles and David. And he said, look, I can put you in touch. And so it was hugely important for me to have their endorsement and to have them involved, actually, was really what I wanted. So I went to Doncaster, met the guys, talked about, maybe bringing the game back. I had a very, very, very sketchy prototype with me at that time. And they were great. They were absolutely wonderful. And David's great because he's one of those guys, he's just an ideas factory, so every time you meet him, you've got 3, 4, 5 ideas. Some of them are daft, some of them are great.
Yeah.
And we sit and bounce off each other. So we had fish and chips in Barnsley, bouncing ideas off each other. So yeah, I mean, for me, the notion was that the original game was still great. So I'd bought it, I'd played it with the same guys I used to play it with when we were 10 years of age,
Yes.
And we all loved it. We all had a great time, a few beers and a bit of a laugh, a bit of nostalgia. But it stuck with me, and I was kind of like, you know what, it's a real shame that, kids aren't getting to experience this the way we did. And I just thought, okay, the original game, great as it is, football's changed. So, for example, there was no transfer windows in the 80s. We had to put that in.
Yep.
The money, obviously, the money aspect of the game, significantly different. The biggest denomination in the 80s games, £100,000, which I think gets you lunch at a Premier League club these days.
Yes.
Even the player cards then, obviously, a motivator to do that. And really just to kind of map it from football in the 80s to modern football, and then they introduce a couple of extra bits that just give it a bit more depth. So the youth player, where you can improve youth players and you can have your own academy, we brought that in. We brought in coaches as well. So just a couple of tweaks, but staying really, really, really close to the original, and definitely to the spirit of the original, which based on certainly the customer feedback, I think we achieved, which is great. And made the child in me very happy.
Yeah, I bet. So does it still incorporate a board game, or is it purely computer now?
No, it's still a board game. The hybrid aspect for me was the thing that was still so unique. So it had never been done since, curiously. So it's certainly not in the football game. So you're kind of going, well, okay, this is new for people in this era because it's all computer games, although board games have had a big resurgence. So yeah, it was keeping that social aspect. So honestly, that is the essence of the game is you're playing with the person sitting across the table. And I wanted to keep that, really make that the central piece of it.
Yeah. And sort of adapting to the modern game as well. What sort of values do you put on the players?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. So we about 100 million for your 5-star players. So it's effectively 20 million per star. In a game I've played in, which was with the guys who created another wonderful football board game called Counter Attack, a guy called Colin Webster, I saw Virgil van Dijk go for 2 billion. That just shows you the inflation. I think we predicted the inflationary times we're in now. So.
Yeah. Have you ever done so badly at the game that you've had to sack yourself?
Yes. I think as well, people when people play it with you, they assume that you know better. That's not really true. Just because you kind of put it together doesn't mean that you're an expert at it.
No.
So yes, I've had absolutely woeful games. Yeah, really terribly woeful games. Yeah. It's part of the game. I like that because football's like that.
Yes, unpredictable. It combines a bit of judgment with a bit of luck, which is what football is, I guess.
Oh, absolutely, and yeah, we did. I'll fess up that we did program in cup sets, for example. So even if you've got a really good team, you could still lose to a Luton or someone like that. Yeah. So yeah, we did kind of shake it up a little bit. Yeah. We've programmed a couple of things in there that we think are probability wise would happen in the real world from time to time.
What sort of feedback have you had from people who've played the new version?
The best thing for me was getting feedback from people who played it with their kids, and their kids really loved it. And we've had a lot of that. So it's guys like me, I'm in my mid-40s. It's guys like me who have a son who's, maybe a teenager. We don't play games together type thing. We played this and he loved it. He absolutely loved it. And you're just like, yep, that's exactly why we did it. That was exactly why we brought it back, to give kids the experience that we had. And that for me is the best thing. The old fans of the original game like it, which was important, but B, their kids like it, which was equally important.
Yes.
So
It keeps the flame alive, definitely. And obviously it's called Football Fortunes now rather than Brian Clough Football Fortunes. So how do people get hold of it and play?
In future plans, so we've got a notion of a 90s expansion. So we're going to do an expansion that is 90s players. We're also talking about a Superstars expansion as well, the original game. I think I will reprint it. I think we probably would have done it. The notion was we released this one in 2020, and the notion was that we would do a game per year, maybe a slightly different version, maybe an upgrade, maybe an expansion. But then obviously with the pandemic, with the shipping crisis, everything got put on the back burner to some degree. Now, there will be a reprint. It won't be the Kickstarter edition. That's the one that we did in 2020. It'll be something else, but there will definitely be a reprint of the game at some point, because the demand is certainly there. Yes. There's no question.
And you mentioned Kickstarter. It was funding, wasn't it? It was a funding campaign that got it off the ground.
It was wonderful. I mean, we built a community. So, like I said, we had the Facebook page. There was a guy who had Brian Clough's Football Fortunes Facebook group who very kindly gave it to us. And it had like 400 members. So that was a big boost for us. So we've kind of built this community of, the willing people who remembered the original game, people who were interested in other football board games. And there's really been an explosion since of football board games. So there's an awful lot of this happening, and there's a mini revival through the crowdfunding platforms of football board games, which is great. I absolutely love that. But yeah, we looked at how we could fund it, and we said, look, if there's demand, we'll go on Kickstarter and we'll see what the demand was like, and it was fantastic.
And what do you think Cloughie would make of it?
I'd like to think that he likes it. We fixed a couple of players. We didn't fix Nigel Clough. Nigel Clough's still a 2.
Oh dear!
So he might have fallen out with that one. I think Brian Clough was a modernist, right? He was a very forward-thinking guy. I'd like to think that anything that got kids, playing football games together would be a good thing in his book. I would hope that would be it. And he'd probably still coach everyone out, hopefully, as well.
Yes, he'd tell them what to do. Yeah, definitely. Marty Neil, thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks to both my guests, Marty Neil and Colin Shields, and thanks to you for listening. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and visit the tribute website, brianclough.com, which helps the types of good causes Cloughie supported. And there's also more details about Football Fortunes on there. I hope you can join me again soon for more memories of the great man in the green jumper.